Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Amanda Kramer, and I am the Associate Director of Alumni Engagement at the University of Colorado Boulder's Leeds School of Business. Welcome to our final quarterly Leeds Professional Development webinar of 2022. We are so excited to be here today. Leeds is a top business school offering undergraduate, MBA, executive MBA, MS, and PhD programs, and has an alumni network of over 41,000 strong, living and working around the world. For today's Leeds Professional Development webinar, we're so excited to welcome Susan Fowler, who is here presenting what we get wrong about goal setting and how motivation science can set us straight. A few housekeeping items before we begin. First, if you have any questions now or during the presentation that you would like to ask Susan, please send a question through the Q&A interface. We will monitor questions as they are submitted, and Susan will respond to them at the end of the presentation. As a reminder, for optimum audio quality, we do have everyone on mute except for myself and our speaker. If you experience any technical difficulties during the webinar, please notify us through the chat interface and one of our support specialists will touch base. Lastly, a link to access the webinar recording will be sent to all registrants tomorrow, along with the survey link and supplemental resources from today's presentation. Now, I am excited to introduce today's speaker. Susan Fowler is the founder and CEO of Mojo Moments, an international organization represented by channel partners and strategic alliances who recognize that motivation is at the heart of everything people do and everything they don't do but wish they did. Susan is on a quest to help leaders at all levels flourish as they succeed. Widely known as one of the foremost experts on motivation and personal empowerment, she gained her knowledge through extensive experience in business, advertising, sales, production, marketing, executive and lifestyle coaching, and leadership training in all 50 states and over 40 foreign countries. Susan has worked with clients as diverse as Apple, Bayer, Bloomberg, Google, and Harley-Davidson. The original version of Why Motivating People Doesn't Work and What Does became a bestseller translated into 14 languages. Susan's Master Your Motivation is a companion book teaching individuals the skill of motivation. Susan was awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award for Instructional Design by the North American Simulations and Gaming Association and is an alumna of the CU Boulder Leeds School of Business. Susan lives in San Diego, and you can communicate with her at susan@susanfowler.com and www.susanfowler.com. Welcome, Susan, and thank you so much for being here. I'm going to hand the webinar over to you now.
Thank you, Amanda. That made me feel really old. But thank you anyway, because it's not all bad being old. You actually learn a few things along the way. And when I think about having graduated from the University of Colorado, there are some experiences from those early days that really have informed what we're talking about today. So here's what I would love for you all who are joining to think about, and that is, why do you avoid setting goals? Now, you'll notice on my screen on the PowerPoint, it says, why do people avoid setting goals? And I did that because sometimes it's hard to see it in ourselves, but it's really easy. For example, if you're a manager or if you're a parent and you're trying to get others to set goals, it's easier to understand what their issues are than your own. So just think about the whole concept of goal setting. What is it that we sometimes not only avoid, but maybe even resent? And so is it because, goals really are unclear? That I think one of the things that happens in today's world is that there's shifting priorities. Things are changing so quickly. There's just this kind of idea of goals are something we're going to achieve in the future, and I'm just running as fast as I can to keep up with what's happening today. And so this whole concept of shifting priorities, maybe it's that we're thinking like, why should I set a goal? Because if I don't achieve it, it's just another way for people to beat me up. All right. Or maybe we just don't know how to set good goals, or they're unrealistic. They're uninspiring. Maybe we're afraid of success or failure, or from past disappointments in trying to achieve goals, and it just doesn't work. We just don't. It's maybe, and I didn't put this on the screen, but I think this could be another one, is that it just feels like it's bureaucratic waste of time. And so if you have other reasons, then I would love for you to put them in either the chat or the Q&A. Reasons that you think that people avoid, or maybe that you avoid goal setting, and that's why you're here today. So what are your issues around goal setting? And what I'm hoping is that by the end of our presentation, you'll have some real insight around why we don't set goals effectively, but also how motivation science can help us to get it right. Because I think that maybe one of the reasons you're even involved in this session is that you suspect that there's something behind goal setting. You kind of believe that there must be some good reasons for setting goals. For example, have you ever had one of those days where you have really good intentions? You get to work and the wind is just blowing in a million different directions. And by the end of the day, you're going, I worked so hard, but what did I accomplish? What progress did I make? And so goals really guide your time, your decisions, and help you feel like you've actually made progress towards something by the end of the day. One of the reasons I really, I guess, embrace goal setting is because of the objectivity that it brings. I'd like to just share an example of what happened to me shortly after my time at the University of Colorado. I was working at a really cool advertising agency in Denver, and I was so excited. This was my first big job in a, kind of a high quality advertising agency that was doing amazing work. And I was the low kid on the totem pole, right? I was young, I was eager, and I was like the girl Friday. So I was just doing anything that people threw at me. And then I was also pretty proactive. And so anything I saw that needed to be done, I was like doing it. And then the agency hired a consultant. And I knew that this consultant must be really good and smart. I still remember his name was Wayne. And I knew he was good and smart for two reasons. One was he's from Chicago, which at the time was really the hotbed of anything advertising. And also he was really tall. Studies had shown that if you're really tall, you go through the corporate structure faster than people who are short. And I'm really short, which is I think one of the reasons I've always worked so hard to try to make up for not being tall. So anyway, I just remember Wayne being coming into our agency, and he was watching, he was observing, and he had us fill out timesheets. And I don't know if you've ever done this, but there were 15-minute increments, and you had to write down every 15 minutes what you were doing. So if I was even going to the restroom, I would run to the restroom and run back, or I would take copy with me to read, advertising copy to proofread, so that I could actually put, that I was productive during that 15 minutes. So I was really serious about this. And then I was really excited because about a week later, Wayne had one-on-one meetings, performance reviews with each one of us. And I was so excited because I love feedback. And so I'm sitting kind of on the edge of my chair, all enthusiastic. And Wayne is sitting in that power sit. You know how you have your arms behind your head? Well, I don't know what this is like, but you have your arms behind your head and your long legs out in front of you. So it's the power sit. And so he says, Susan, I've been observing you for the last week, and I've analyzed your time logs and your list of tasks. And I have a direct piece of feedback that I'm going to give you. You talk too much. And I went, excuse me? And he goes, you talk too much. You could get so much more done if you didn't talk so much. And I was like, I don't even understand what you're talking about. And I have to admit that at that point, I shut down. I do not even remember the rest of the meeting. And I'm sorry, I do remember one thing he said. He told me to just settle down, that when I was older, I would understand. Now, in my own head, I was thinking, wait a minute, of course I talk a lot. I'm on the phone to media buyers trying to put them off from media salespeople, trying to protect our media buyers from having to have all those conversations. I was talking to production people at the newspapers and the TV and the radio stations because we were always late, and I was trying to have relationships that would enable us to maybe get past the deadline. And so in my own mind, I was justifying the fact that I talked a lot. And so I shut down and I didn't listen to anything else Wayne said. Now I'm older, and here's what I understand. That had I had specific goals, I could have said to Wayne, well, Wayne, that's very interesting. Help me understand what more I could be accomplishing if I didn't talk so much. What goals have I not accomplished? What goals do you think I could accomplish? And what recommendations would you have for me to be more productive in achieving my goals? But because we didn't have those kinds of goals, I heard his feedback as his opinion. It was not objective, it was subjective. And so I tuned him out. I probably could have learned something, but instead I just shut it out. So this is the other reason that I really think that we need to set goals. Goals guide our work, but they also give us a way to be assertive, to stand up for ourselves, to do what we feel needs to be done. So a person who does not have a goal is used by someone who does. So a lot of you probably are familiar with SMART goals. And I think that, I hope that you didn't expect that today I was going to talk about SMART goals. And I'm not, except to say this, that if you're familiar with SMART goals, that they typically have been specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound or trackable. That is really smart, that we need, if we're going to have objective goals that help us to make progress, they do need to be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound and trackable. So what motivation science says is that it's the quality of the goals that we set, and it's the motivation behind the goals. And that's what determines whether or not we are going to achieve them or not. So what I did was early in my career was that I changed SMART from specific and measurable. So I put the specific and measurable together and changed the M to motivating. And so what I want to talk to you about today is this concept of, are your goals high quality goals that generate what we call optimal motivation? And that's what today is really about. So as Amanda said when she introduced me, there's a whole idea that motivation is at the heart of everything we do and everything we don't do, but wish that we did. And that's what's really important, is this idea that your goals are optimally motivating. This is the typical SMART goals, and this is what I changed to motivating. Does the goal generate high quality motivation? Because one thing, as we said, at the heart of everything you do and everything you don't do but wish you did is this concept of motivation. But here's the thing, motivation matters, and the science says this, that obviously the motivation matters as you're pursuing the goal, as you're trying to achieve it, but actually the quality of the goal that you set also can determine the quality of the energy that you have to pursue it. So I'd like to explain to you what I mean by that. And what I'm hoping is that by the end of this presentation, you might have a goal in mind that you would like to achieve if only you had the motivation for it, right? And so even in the chat, or the better yet, the Q&A, if you could write down a goal you're thinking about, and then let's run it through this prism of motivation that I'm going to be sharing with you. So traditional approaches to motivation ask questions like, are you motivated to achieve your goal? Or are you motivated more or less than other people? Now, here's the problem. When you ask, are you motivated? It gives you a binary choice, yes or no. And motivation is not a binary issue. That we always think of motivation as the quantity, like how much motivation do you have? Do you have a lot or do you have a little? But what motivation science tells us, and this is very exciting to me, I hope you find it exciting, is that motivation is about quality. That is the quality of the motivation behind your goal. And so, for example, there are 6 what we call motivational outlooks in the spectrum of motivation. Let me just give you an example. Let's say that you're a manager and that you have a goal to perform X number of performance reviews by a certain date. Your motivational outlook for delivering those performance reviews is going to determine not only whether you get it done or not, but the quality of the energy that you bring to that. So can you imagine if you're a leader and your job is to deliver, let's say you're my manager and I have not been performing up to your expectations, and you need to have a performance review with me to get me to do, like Wayne, to change my behavior, right? But you're disinterested when it comes to doing performance reviews. Disinterested motivation means you really don't care one way or the other. You don't have a dog in the fight. It's kind of like you put your head in the sand and yeah, I got to do performance reviews, so I'll just go through the motions. A lot of people in our organizations today, and maybe this is what you're feeling, is because change is happening and there's so much overwhelming just kind of pressures in life right now, that we've just check out, that we tune out. It's what I did after I heard Wayne's subjective opinion of me. I just became disinterested. Okay. You might have, if you're a leader, you might have external motivation to do a performance review. In other words, you're thinking, well, this is what I get paid to do. And if I don't do this, I won't get paid. It's all about a tangible or intangible reward that you're going to receive. Maybe there's an incentive for doing all your performance reviews, or you'll get some badges or some tokens if you do all your performance reviews by a certain time and you want those tokens and badges. That's external motivation. It's what we typically call the carrot, carrot and stick motivation. You might feel imposed. Oh, I can't believe I have to do these performance reviews. I can't believe that this is one of my goals, but I've got to do it or else. So you're afraid of what's going to happen if you don't do it. The imposed motivational outlook is when you feel guilty or frustrated or angry or resentful or fearful. It's also when you just feel obliged, like I have to do something. Like, for example, have you ever had on your calendar, like maybe today, you told Amanda or someone else, I'm going to go to that webinar that Susan's doing. And so you signed up for it and you look at your calendar and you go, oh gosh, I can't believe I signed up for this thing, but I better do it, or they're going to think, badly of me or ill of me. And so even something that we sign up for, like lunch with a friend, and then you look at your calendar and you go, oh, I can't believe I have to go to lunch today. And so there oftentimes are things that we sign ourselves up to do, but we end up feeling the imposed motivational outlook. It's taking away from our discretionary time, and so we don't want to do it. The aligned motivational outlook is when you're doing a performance review, or maybe you're here at this webinar and you're saying, you know what? I'm aligned with values that are really important to me. I have a value for learning, so that's why I'm here today. Or as a leader, I have a value for giving people input, or I have a value for developing people. I have a value for giving people feedback that's going to help them get better. And so you are aligned because of the values that you have around your leadership. And so performance reviews become a way of fulfilling your values. Now, you might have an integrated motivational outlook, and this feels like it's aligned, but it's more subconscious. It's like, it's not that you have a value for giving people feedback and developing them. It's that's who you are. You are a leader who develops people. It's kind of like, I'm a vegetarian. And I could say in the beginning, in the early days, I was a vegetarian because I was aligned to values around animal well-being, the planet, my health. I had all kinds of values that aligned with being a vegetarian. But today, 40 years or more after becoming a vegetarian, I'm integrated. I just say, I am a vegetarian. So I still have all those values, but they're more integrated into how I self-identify. And so if your goal is one that taps into the way you identify as a human being, as to who you are, then that's the integrated motivational outlook. And then the inherent motivational outlook is when you, and I know this might sound kind of crazy, but you just love doing performance reviews. You think they're fun. Or maybe you're going like, I'll go to that webinar because you know what, it's kind of fun. Just having that on in the background as I multitask, right? As I eat my lunch or whatever. And I just find it fun. And so there's no real purpose behind it necessarily. There's no real value for it, but it's just something you enjoy. So what happens with the spectrum of motivation, and why I get so excited about motivation science, is it's a better view of reality. And if we understand this, this will not only help us set more effective, high quality goals, but it will help us to shift our motivation as we pursue those high quality goals. So when it comes to motivation, what matters most is the quality of your motivation. It's not the quantity, it's the quality. And so this is really important, especially today. If you're thinking just the thought of setting goals takes my energy away, or you're thinking about some goals that you have right now and you're feeling, I just feel depleted. When I think about them, instead of giving me energy, they suck my energy away. Then please note that what the motivation science shows is that when your motivation is what we call suboptimal, it's disinterested, external, or imposed, that's like the junk food of motivation. And it's just like junk food. Like if you have low energy, low physical energy, you try to get your energy and your blood sugar up by drinking caffeine or eating sugar or eating carbs, and your blood sugar goes way up. And then what happens? You crash. And then what happens? You need more caffeine, you need more carbs, you need more sugar. And so you're on this roller coaster all day long. Well, motivation science says the same thing is true about the quality of your motivation, that when it's suboptimal, it's not going to sustain you through those challenges of trying to sustain yourself through the pursuit of that goal. And when you're optimally motivated, it's like the health food of motivation. And so it's going to give you positive energy. And so low energy, if you're feeling it, it might be physical, but have you ever had one of those days where you're eating fine, you got a good night's sleep, you're exercising, and you still can't drag yourself out of bed? What's that all about? That's about not physical energy, but psychological energy. And motivation is psychological energy. And so if you want vitality, and that's the energy that is attainable to us, we can just choose to have that vitality. That's what we have when we're optimally motivated. So to rethink goal setting, now that everything else in the world has changed, I mean, we're in a different world today than we were 2-3 years ago. I think you all can agree to that. And so now that everything else has changed, we really need to appreciate the difference between low quality goals that drive suboptimal motivation and high quality goals that promote optimal motivation. And that's really my message today, is that if you want to set goals that are optimally motivating, they're high quality to begin with, and they're more likely to sustain your energy over time, then what we really need to focus on is this horizontal line in the spectrum of motivation, which is your psychological needs. And this is where I think motivation science has made the biggest breakthroughs. And so this is radically, really, literally changed the quality of my life, is understanding these psychological needs. And so those psychological needs are required for vitality, that these are the nutriments, not nutrients like you have for your physical energy, but nutriments that you need for that psychological energy so that you can experience optimal motivation and thrive. And what's exciting, I think, about these psychological needs, and probably one of the reasons that my books have been translated into so many languages and why the work at Mojo Moments is global, is because these psychological needs do not depend on gender or generation or culture or race. It's human needs. So no matter who you are, if you're a human being, these three basic psychological needs that we all need are called choice, connection, and competence. And just to give you a sense of how important they are, think about the last couple of years with COVID and how for example, when we had all the mandates that you have to wear a mask and you have to socially distance and all of the different things that we were told that we could or couldn't do, how it eroded so many people's sense of choice, that rather than internalizing it as, oh, I have a choice to wear a mask or not, it was, oh, I have to wear a mask. And it's almost like when you're on a diet and you go, I can't eat a muffin. And so what is the first thing you really want when you tell yourself you can't have a muffin? You want a muffin desperately. And so that is what happens when we feel that our autonomy or our sense of choice has been eroded. Connection, so like when we had to not be able to see each other or we couldn't see each other through masks, it was really interfering with people's sense of connection, doing everything virtually. And so while we can do a lot of wonderful connection virtually, there was just something about the in-person connection that we all need as human beings that went missing. And then there was that whole idea of competence, and that is our need to feel like we're effective at meeting everyday challenges. And here we were in an environment that where we had never experienced what we were experiencing ever in our lives. And so that whole concept of not being able to even know what was going to happen, the amount of uncertainty that we were dealing with. And so I remember when I decided I was going to wear a mask to go to the grocery store for the first time, and I'd never worn a mask in my life. And So I chose to wear a mask because I was choosing to go to the grocery store, and I was choosing to not get kicked out of the grocery store and to cause a scene. So I chose to wear the mask. And the reason that you make a choice is really important. So if I ask myself, why am I wearing that mask? It was because I didn't want to be that person that might be a carrier of COVID and give it to some unsuspecting person who had low immunity or whatever. And so what I wanted to do was protect other people. It's the same reason I don't drink and drive, right? Is I'm making a choice not to drink and drive because I care about not hurting or harming another human being. So I had the choice and connection down. I was walking into the store and I had my glasses on and they were all fogging up. And I was like, I can't believe I can't even see. I can't think. I feel like stupid. I can't even tell what's on the shelves. I was dropping my wallet. I just felt like an idiot. And then I realized I had my mask upside down. I didn't realize it had that little metal thing to keep your breath from fogging up your glasses. And so I turned my mask upside, right side up. And then I had this realization. Wait a minute, Susan, you've got the psychological need for choice. You've got the psychological need for connection, but you don't have a psychological need for competence that's being fulfilled right now. And then I had that aha moment where I went, wow, neurosurgeons do surgery wearing masks. Maybe I could learn to do my grocery shopping wearing a mask. And in that moment, my motivation shifted and I had no issues with the mask. And, so today when I go to my physical therapist or whatever, and I wear a mask, it's just not a big deal. But it was because I understood that the reason I was imposed motivation or disinterested motivation was because one of these three was missing. And what the research says is there's like a domino effect. If you're missing any one of these, then the other two tend to not feel that they are also being fulfilled. Now, here's something I think is really fascinating. And there's a big research study done by McKinsey this year. And what they identified were the three top reasons that people have identified for resigning from their current job and looking for a new one, or the whole quit and stay or quiet quitting phenomenon. And look at this. The first reason they cite is a lack of autonomy. In fact, there was a quote, anything for autonomy and flexibility. The second was to escape a toxic culture and meaningless work. And the third reason was their desire for more growth and learning opportunities. Those are the three cited in this study. Isn't it fascinating that those three reasons are choice, connection, and competence? And so these three psychological needs truly are fundamental. They're basic psychological needs that are fundamental to our ability to thrive and flourish and be productive simultaneously in our work. And they're critical to our goal setting process. So what motivation science shares with us is that if we're going to set goals that are high quality, then we need to avoid goals that are measured by any kind of social recognition, by image and appearance, by material success, winning for the sake of tangible or intangible rewards. And that includes tokens, badges, incentives, trips, prizes. It's not that you don't want all that stuff. It's just that if that's the reason that you're setting the goal, or that your goal is built around these ideas, that you're setting yourself up to fail. So again, I'm saying that it's not just your motivation while you're achieving your goal, it's the quality of the type of goal that you're setting in the first place. So we want to avoid those types of goals because they erode psychological needs. They throw us most likely into suboptimal motivation. But if we can set goals that are high quality, then we not only, so let me just read this quote because this is so important, that research shows that even if you achieve low quality goals, you don't experience the vitality and positive effects that you do when you set high quality goals. And so that's why one of the reasons we want to set high quality goals. And so to set high quality goals, focus on developed values, not programmed values. And what does that mean? That whenever you are setting goals and you're saying something like, well, I'm a baby boomer, or I'm a Gen Xer, or I'm a millennial, all of those designations are based on program values determined by the generation that you grow up in, right? Because we all have common experiences. As a baby boomer, we have common experiences that shape the program values that we bring to the world. But I'm asking people to let go of program values, or at least explore them, know what they are, because they're guiding your behavior, but you probably don't even know it because you haven't explored them. And so instead, to really focus on making choices around your values, that values are choices that you make based on your beliefs. So set high quality goals by focusing on developed values that you've explored and you've looked at the alternatives that involve personal growth, so that you are feeling that you're making progress in your life. There's a whole thing about, growing old and wise. Unfortunately, a lot of us just grow old and not wise. And so we can set goals that really help us regarding our personal growth in areas that make us feel like we're growing wiser. Affiliation, in other words, goals that help us to feel like we belong, or that we're that we're connected in a meaningful and genuine way, not in a way that makes us feel that we're being used, or that we're using someone else, where there's an ulterior motive. That we're setting goals that are based on community, justice, and the welfare of others. This is so important, that our goals, that we don't have to set goals that bring us a reward at the end, or that we achieve our outcomes at the expense of others. And what science says is that if we set those goals and pursue those goals where we win because somebody else is losing, that does not give us a sense of satisfaction. And so we just keep having to it's like eating junk food and then having to keep, giving yourself junk food to keep going. The same thing is true when we set goals that are selfish or self-centered and not other focused. And that might relate to our physical health, but not for the purpose of image and status, but rather for the vitality that it's going to give us, so that we can do the things in life that we truly want to do. And improving your financial situation, but for the right reasons. If you want to get more money, everybody wants money. Does money motivate people? Absolutely. But when you set goals based on earning money because you want that money to improve your status, or you can buy more things, for all the external motivation, then research shows that you're less likely to achieve those goals. But even if you do, you're not going to be a very peaceful, feeling, joyful, centered person. You're just going to keep striving because there's never enough. There's never enough. And so setting goals based on growth and learning. So what the motivation science tells us is that if we set goals based on these ideas, that we have more likelihood that we're going to experience the vitality that comes from optimal motivation, that those types of goals are more likely to satisfy our psychological needs for choice, connection, and competence. So what you yearn for in your work cannot be achieved or bought through low quality goals pursued with suboptimal motivation. What we're really needing is to be able to set goals that are high quality. And then if you're ever in that situation where you're struggling and you're thinking, well, what choices have I made? What choices could I make going forward? If you just start asking yourself these questions, you're going to start to notice your motivation shifting. So what we get wrong about goals too, is that we set a goal and then we think, okay, well, now that I've set it, I'll just achieve it. We might set up milestones, because if they're smart, you've set up milestones. But even setting up milestones, you might become disinterested or get tempted by external or imposed motivation along the way. And so if you could just stop and ask yourself, wow, whenever I'm feeling low energy, or I don't feel like doing this goal, or, today I've got to do performance reviews, ask, what choices have I made? What choices could I make going forward? And then you realize, oh, I do have choices around performance reviews. Or connection, what choices create meaning by aligning to your values, a sense of purpose, and the welfare of others. And then ask competence, what choices will take advantage of the skills I have to make progress, and what could I learn? So motivation science can help us set high quality goals, but then when we apply it as we're pursuing the goal, it can help us sustain optimal motivation as we achieve the goals. So if you want to, if you're just curious about your own motivational outlook on a goal that you have, feel free to go to our website at www.mojomoments.com, and there's a survey on there, and it's free, and it just takes less than 10 minutes, and it gives you options. You make choices about the way you feel about your goal, and you get an instant reading of whether you actually have suboptimal or optimal motivation for that goal. So I'm really curious to know what you think of that when you get it. And it also will give you tips on, if you have suboptimal motivation, what are some ideas for shifting? And if you have optimal motivation, then how do you sustain that over time? So that's a free survey I wanted to offer. And I'd like to just share some information too that you might find helpful or interesting. This is based on literally thousands and thousands of research studies regarding optimal motivation. And so if you have optimal motivation compared to other workers or employees, colleagues who don't have it, here's what you can expect. You will deliver 31% higher productivity. You will demonstrate 3 times higher creativity. You are 10 times more engaged by your job. You're 40% more likely to be considered or get a promotion. You will generate 37% higher sales, and you're 3 times more satisfied with your job. But here's the thing. These results, these kinds of outcomes only happen if you have a frequency of optimally motivating experiences throughout your day. So if you just have one goal and you're suboptimally motivated on that goal, it's really likely you're not going to experience these. But if you have, say, 3 to 5 goals that are really present in your everyday work, and you are aware of your motivation, and you are able to shift your motivation when it goes suboptimal, then you're going to experience extraordinary differences. And can I just say that these are all quantitative measures. What this really doesn't talk about is the qualitative measure of just feeling that vitality, joy, a sense of peace and well-being, which I think we all need a dose of these days. I hope you agree with that. So also we've done study, this is our own research that we've done. And what we found is that there are 5 intentions that people have when they are at the upper end of employee engagement. When people are have what we call employee work passion, they have these 5 intentions. And what we did was we correlated these 5 intentions and the type of motivation you have. And when you're optimally motivated, you have a significantly higher chance that you're going to experience these 5 intentions. In fact, there's a significant positive correlation. Then you have suboptimal motivation. There's no correlation to these 5 intentions whatsoever. When we pull out disinterested motivation, there's actually a negative significant correlation, meaning that you might actually be sabotaging some of these intentions when you're disinterested. So there's actually a business case to be made for us being optimally motivated in the workplace. But what I'm really wanting to share today is what you as an individual can benefit from by just rethinking the way that you approach goal setting. Because if you want to actually feel engaged at work, if you actually want to have that sense of vitality, then optimal motivation is what fuels work passion and the upper end of engagement. Suboptimal motivation is what fuels disengagement. And I have to say, I don't know anyone who enjoys being disengaged. I don't think people want to be bored at work. I don't think anybody wants to think they're doing a job that doesn't make a contribution to their and other people's well-being. So one of the things that makes me sad about this whole idea of quiet quitting is that not only are people who are quiet quitting just doing the minimum effort, they're not contributing, they're not being organizational citizens and going the extra mile, but they're also depriving themselves of the joy they could feel 75% of their life that they spend awake. Because think about this, 75% of the time you spend awake is connected to your work. It's getting ready for work. If you work outside your home, it's getting to work. It's working. It's decompressing at the end of the day. And so if we are going through our work and we're suboptimally motivated with disinterested motivation because we have quiet quit or we're quit and staying, we're only hurting ourselves. Not only, we are hurting ourselves and we're also hurting others. So I'd like to know what's become clear, if anything, if we have any questions and or comments, and I'm going to just check the Q&A. So I have a question. Do you have any good ways to sort through my list of goals? Sometimes I have so many, I don't know where to start. And so the whole idea of prioritizing your goals is so important. And I love, I do this quite often where I look at all my goals and I actually ask myself, of all of these goals, which of them is going to give me the highest degree of connection? And the reason I ask that is because if I have a list of goals, I can choose to accept or deny any of them, even if they're goals that somebody else has imposed on me. I can choose or not choose, I can choose to do it or not do it. If I don't have the competence to do a goal, then I can always learn. And that might be a good reason to do the goal because I have something to learn. Or I might have the competence and I can apply it to that goal. But what really matters to me when I'm trying to sort through my priority of goals is this goal going to bring meaning to me and make a contribution to others? And that's what connection is. Connection is your contribution to the greater good. Connection is aligning what you do with goals, aligning your goals with values that are meaningful to you and a sense of purpose. And so if you are having a list of goals, I would assume that you have choice. I would say whether you have competence or not, you can gain the competence or use the competence you have. But the criteria of what to do first is going to lie in that middle column of which of these goals is the most meaningful and has the greatest chance of making a contribution to my growth and to the welfare of others. That would be my recommendation. Let me just, and Amanda, if you have questions or comments, feel free to ask them. I've got one more example I wanted to share, but go ahead. Do you have any more questions or?
Yes, we've got a question from a few different people related to translating what you shared from individual to team settings. A specific question around this, Gaurav asks, how do you motivate large teams to a common goal, especially when it's challenging and new and you have a lot of different personalities on the team?
Well, first of all, and thank you for that question, whoever you are. I'd love to rid your vocabulary of a phrase. How do you motivate people? Because you can't. No team leader, no parent, no teacher can motivate anyone else. People are already motivated. The question is, how are they motivated? So let me just go here to this. So the question is, what type of motivation do they have? And so if you ask yourself, whether it's an individual or in a team setting, if you ask people what their motivational outlook is to achieve the goal. Now, let's say you have a team of 8 people, and each of those 8 people are bringing specific skills and knowledge and abilities to that goal. Then each one of them may have a different motivational outlook for the role they're playing for achieving that goal. So as a team leader, I would actually ask the team members, what is your motivational outlook? And what you might discover is if you've got a bunch of people on that team who are feeling imposed, then maybe the goal isn't as meaningful, or you haven't been able to establish the contribution that the goal is making. Maybe there are people who are feeling imposed or disinterested because they don't have the competence necessary to contribute what they need to contribute to the team. Maybe they are feeling a lack of connection, like maybe they're feeling like an outsider, or that people don't respect them. And so they're feeling disinterested, and you discover that the reason for their disinterest is a lack of feeling that they're really genuinely accepted by the rest of the team. So even though you're leading a team and hopefully the goal that you're talking about is an interdependent goal where everyone's contributing to the achievement of that goal, just because you have 8 people sitting in a room saying that they're going to achieve this goal does not mean that they all have the same type of motivational outlook for achieving the goal. And so if, let's say, you have somebody who's really a kind of an informal leader on the team, and they're disinterested, the reason that these are bubbles is because people's motivational outlooks can bubble up depending on what's happening. So just imagine you're in a team, and let's say that you are actually aligned. Your team is working on a goal, and you see the value of that goal, and you see the value that you can contribute to that goal. And there's kind of a informal leader in the team who's disinterested, and they're like, oh yeah, this is so stupid, or I don't really care. You guys just do it. If you do it, great. Tell me, just keep me informed, and they're just kind of low energy around it. And you go, wow, I wonder why they think this is stupid. Maybe I'm looking at this wrong. And so then your motivation kind of goes down to disinterested, and you're going, I don't know. And so what happens is that if everyone on the team isn't either aligned, integrated, or inherently motivated to achieve the goal, then the people who are suboptimally motivated can absolutely pull the energy of the entire group down. And that's when, and this is why team leadership is so exponentially harder than leading in the one-to-one context, is because you not only manage the dynamics of the team, but in order to manage the dynamics of the team, you may need to deal with the individual motivation of the individuals on the team. I hope that answered the question.
Another set of questions that's come in, they're all very similar. Let me pull from Evans here. He says, how do you understand or set timeframes for completion of your goals? And how do you know when to adjust your goal during the process of working toward it?
What was the last part, Amanda? How do I know what?
If and when to adjust your goal as you're working toward it.
Oh, I love that. Why is it that we think that goals are set in stone? They're not. The reason that you set a goal is so you have a finish line. Now, this is really important to have a finish line, because anybody who's a runner, that if you don't have that finish line and you just keep running, you're going to just die. You're going to collapse of exhaustion. You need that finish line. I think it was Lily Tomlin that said, that if you don't have a deadline, then instead of running the human race, you're running the rat race. And the problem with the rat race is even if you win, you're still a rat. And so you really need that finish line. And the wonderful thing about this human race is that we learn as we go. And so as you make progress towards your goal, it's really important to continually evaluate that goal and to ask yourself, if I'm not making progress, why is it? Is it because I have, my motivation has slipped into disinterested, external, or imposed? Could it be because I don't feel like it's my choice anymore, and all of a sudden I'm feeling like other people are making demands of me? What's going on? Do I no longer feel connected, or that the goal is important? So I think we constantly need to reevaluate our goals. And what you might discover is that the goal you set originally that was specific and measurable is not attainable. That the resources you thought you had, or the competence you thought you could bring to it, or that the world's changed. And so what's happening is your competence is now threatened. You can't do it because you don't have what you need to actually achieve the goal. So I think we're constantly needing to clarify our goal, maybe renegotiate our goal, or rethink the actual specifics of the goal. So don't think your goals are set in stone. I think it's a constant evaluative process. And that's the same with your motivation. And I think your motivation could be a red flag. Anytime you feel like you've lapsed into suboptimal motivation, ask yourself why that is. And what that might be is a sign that you need to reevaluate and even reset the goal. And that might mean that you have to renegotiate it with whomever gave you the, tasked you with the goal or agreed to the goal in the first place.
For completion, we have a few questions around how do I even set a remote time frame for completion? Where do I start?
Well, that just really depends on the goal. Something that I just have been writing about is how leaders, and I think this is true of parents or teachers. So let me just do it from that perspective and then come back to our own use of it, is that we need to set timelines and deadlines as a way to provide information. So a timeline is a way of giving us data that enables us to plan effectively. Too often, deadlines are imposed and then they create anxiety and stress. And hopefully a quick example is I'm in the midst of editing another book for my publisher, Barrett Kohler, and I've worked with a lot of publishers. I've published 6 or 8 books, and most of the time it's been it's not a pleasant experience, because the publisher you get all excited because you get a book deal, and then they give you this deadline, and it's like there's just pressure. And as soon as you feel, as a writer, you feel this pressure, it's like you just kind of want to run away from it. You want to hide from it. So I get disinterested and imposed. What Barrett Kohler does is they show me the entire scope of what is going to happen to my book and all the touch points of here's what everybody's doing. And then they highlight my role. And so Susan submits her first manuscript here. She has edits done by this time. And it's given to me in the context of the greater whole. And all of a sudden, I realize it's not an imposition to have my manuscript done by a certain date. It's my contribution to the chain of events that's going to happen from everybody that's contributing to this wonderful experience. So what I would say is, I think it's really important for us to map out the steps that need to happen, make an action plan for the goal, and then say what's realistic in terms of my ability to attain the end result. And then your timelines work backwards. So, but it's really hard if you've never done a goal before to say, I'm going to have that goal done by a certain date. But even if you set that, you then have to work backwards. But I would say what I do is I actually make a mind map of all the things I'm going to have to do to achieve that goal. And then I estimate kind of how long I think each of those things is going to take me. And I say, well, it's going to take me 3 months. It's going to take me 2 months. And then that's when I set my goal. So that's how I do it for myself. But if you're given a goal and there's a timeline there, then it's really important to start with that and work backwards. And then if you determine it can't be done, it is impossible, it is not attainable, then that's when you need to get into renegotiation. But go armed with information. I hope that answered the question.
And we are almost at the top of the hour. So Susan, I wanted to see if you had any closing comments, and then we'll close out today's webinar.
Oh, thanks, Amanda. A couple of quick things. One is that if you all are interested in more about motivation, these are my 2 books and they're on Amazon. That's great. And then if you want to text articles to this number, then you will get automatically downloaded our white paper. It's calling Rethinking Leadership, now that everything else has changed. But you'll also get 2 journal articles that I wrote. One is for rethinking leadership competencies, and it's a academic peer-reviewed article. And another one, it was one that was done with my husband, Dr. Drea Zagarmi, and Dr. Taylor Payton. And it's about the use of leadership power and the effect that leadership power has on people's motivation. So if you're just interested, if you're kind of geeky and you want more information about motivation, then feel free to do that. And then I just wanted to share this and this idea that motivation is truly the soul of the goal. This might sound like a silly little thing, but I just want to give you a quick example. I decided I needed to quit eating sugar, and I love sugar. And so I said, okay, I need to have an aligned motivational outlook around eating sugar. So that means it needs to be values-based. So I said, what is my value for not eating sugar? And I realized that I teach motivation science. I teach goal setting. So I just really need to be a good role model. So that was the value that I had going into stop eating sugar. So then every time I needed to stop eating sugar, I would ask myself, what choices do I have? I could eat the sugar, I could put sugar in my coffee, or I could choose not to. See, what happens is we oftentimes say, oh, I have to stop eating sugar. And so we stop putting sugar, but then we want more sugar, like I said about the muffin. And so I said, okay, I could choose to have sugar or not have sugar. And sometimes I chose to have the sugar, and then I noticed how it made me feel. And I was disappointed in myself, and I didn't like that. Sometimes guilt's a good thing. And so I said, okay, I'm going to choose not to eat sugar, but I also need competence. How can I do that? And I then put a plan together that instead of having 2 teaspoons of sugar in my coffee, I would have 1 teaspoon of sugar and 1 teaspoon of stevia. And then I just had this little plan of I was going to keep weaning myself off of sugar and onto stevia. I can say that today, because I was making conscious choices, because I had connection to a value that was important to me, and because I set up my a little plan to have competence, that I am now today a non-sugar eater. Now, will I eat something like a Reese's peanut butter cup that has sugar? Absolutely, I will. But that's my choice, and I don't have to feel imposed about it. I can every once in a while indulge, but in general, I've achieved my goal. So just remember, motivation is the soul of the goal, whether that's the way you set the goal or what happens to you as you pursue the goal. Thank you all for listening. And let me just stop sharing because I know that, Amanda, you have a couple of closing comments.
And thank you to Susan for this great information. At this time, we invite you to provide your feedback on the webinar by answering the following poll question. On a scale from 1 to 10, how likely are you to recommend this webinar to a friend or fellow Leeds alumni? We thank you in advance for submitting your feedback. As a reminder, all webinar attendees will receive an email tomorrow with a link to the recording of this presentation, as well as a survey. To view upcoming webinars, as well as previous recordings, please go to our website at colorado.edu/business/alumni. We look forward to our next webinar, which will be next quarter in the new year. In the meantime, have a great rest of your day. Thank you for your time, and go Buffs.
That's what I was going to say, Amanda. Go Buffs.
Perfect.